Well, week 9 of the head-to-head challenge, but two new handicappers. Defending champion Will White, unfortunately, cannot be with us this week, but he will be back next time to take on the winner of this week's battle. Welcome along to Betting Weekly Extra Time European Edition. You're with myself, Dan Roebuck, while senior handicapper Steve Wyss is also with me. Our challengers this week, as you can see, US-based sports capper RJ and Spanish football journalist Ruairidh Barlow. They both get 2 picks each officially. Whoever has the best record at the end of the weekend stays on. Steve, it is unprecedented, though. No defending champion this week. Like a boxer who's relinquished his belt for one reason or another. Will's not going to be with us, so we've got 2 new challenges. I don't know what to think about it all.
Well, good day, Dan, and good day to RJ and Rory. I guess this was always going to happen at some point, wasn't it, Dan? Something strange like this, but maybe Will was running scared by RJ, who actually beat him last time in the head-to-head.
Could be.
And, an abdication, basically, isn't it? In terms of monarchy terms, who was that British king who abdicated?
No,
Edward the Ninth?
Edward
the Eighth?
George? Yeah, I can't
remember. Yeah, he's the Edward the Eighth of the Because We Win team. But
he's going to be back next week. So the winner of Rory and RJ will get to play Will White. We're going to kick off with RJ's first pick. We are very La Liga heavy on the European Challenge this week. So we'll get Rory's thoughts on one or two of the other picks as well as we go, since he is our Madrid-based Spanish football expert. But RJ, you're going to kick us off with Real Sociedad against Mallorca here. This is a Saturday 8 a.m. kickoff Eastern time. Real Sociedad, short price favourites here, but it's the goals market that we are looking at. RJ.
Yeah, good day, everyone. So looking at Real Sociedad versus Mallorca, over 2 goals at -121. Atletico Madrid took down Real Sociedad right before the international break with the 89th minute penalty, which would have been their 13th point for Real Sociedad in 6 matches. However, at home, they've piled up 12 goals in 3 consecutive La Liga wins. They've also conceded at least 3 goals in 2 of those matches, 3 against Getafe, 3 against Granada. And they've scored 26 league goals at home last season, and they've already scored 12 in just their recent weeks. So they remain an absolute juggernaut at home. And recent head-to-head history here, I think if you guys look at this, and Rory, I'll be interested to get your thoughts. But even though Sociedad won 8 out of their last 10 head-to-head, there've been a lot of low-scoring 1-0. 2-0 type matches here between these two sides. But to start the season, you would say Mallorca definitely has the firepower to net here. They've netted 9 goals in their last 5 La Liga matches, and their defense is pretty poor. They've had one of their worst league starts in La Liga since 2005, 2006. The positives here are a 3-game win streak or a 3-game draw for them, particularly against top sides who were the top sides prior to international break. So looking at this match, pronunciation issues again. Takefusa Kubo on Sociedad has been pretty strong for them. He scored 4 of their last 5 home matches, and he scored he scored in their 3 times in the first 10 minutes of their matches. And then Mallorca striker Murki from Kosovo, who missed their only international match from suspension, returns, so he'll be fresh. Looking at trends, all but 2 of their last 9 La Liga matches involving either club has produced over 2.5 goals. So you look at that, it appears to be goal heavy, but I looked at this from a stat perspective. It was tough to overlook here. From a goal perspective, Real Sociedad at home, 2.8 goals for over the last 5 home matches, and allowing 1.6, just under 2 goals against. Mallorca on the road, 1.8 goals for, 2.2 goals against. So a 4.2 goal average between these both sides over the last 5 matches in their respective home and away spots. To me, at over 2 goals, this this was a no-brainer and probably a standout play for this weekend.
At -121, over 2 goals on the Asian handicap goal line. Steve?
Do you know what? This is a really, from a betting perspective, this is a bit of a unique one because we've got a really strong home favourite, -175 home favourite. And it's not often you get a goal line this low when you've got such a big favourite. So that immediately stood out to me. The books are convinced this is going to end 1-0 or 2-0, basically. Why are Mallorca expected just not to score a goal here? Because they're Real Sociedad are nothing fanciful in terms of their metrics this year for expected goals against. It's not a guarantee they're going to keep a clean sheet. And I'm just wondering why on earth this is actually priced up the way it is. Maybe the head-to-head is a thing. 9 of the last 10 have been both teams to score no. But, I've said many times before, I'm not a man for head-to-head records. I did earmark Real Sociedad at the start of the season as a top 4. I think I backed them in the top 4 market. And whenever I've seen them in the Champions League, they've looked quite good to me. So I'm expecting quite a comfortable home win. You're probably thinking they can at least push this goal line on their own, 2-0, probably 3-0. But, the way that Sociedad have defended this year, there's no guarantee they'll keep a clean sheet. So this does make a lot of sense. To get over 2 goals at -114, full push if there's exactly 2 goals, looks a pretty solid pick.
I'm going to throw something at Rory here because when we started previewing the La Liga matches, we looked at Real Sociedad at home. And if you remember, Rory, and I'm sure you will, they were just winning home games 1-0, every other weekend, 1-0, 1-0. They had 7 or 8 1-0 wins. There was a whole host of both teams to score no. Has anything changed with Villarreal, Rory? That's the question for bettors here. RJ's put up, 2 or more. Steve is suggesting it could be a fair play. Has anything changed from that side we saw a couple of years ago, which were just ultra efficient from at home and just kept winning 2-0 by 1 or 2 goals?
Yeah, I think Imanol Alguacil has moved Real Sociedad forward a bit. He's gone for scoring more goals than the opposition as opposed to just kind of battling it out, keeping a clean sheet, and then scoring that one crucial goal. Mikel Oyarzabal, who's the captain, the Spain international, he's really back in form. He suffered an ACL about 18, 20 months ago now. He looks back to his best, so that's a big factor as well for them. It's a bit of an identity test. I mean, I think I probably come at this at betting, I think, from a slightly different angle because I'm obviously covering these teams from a journalistic perspective as opposed to a purely betting perspective. And I was actually speaking to Javier Aguirre, the Mallorca manager, just last week. And it's going to be a bit of an identity test for Mallorca, who are better in attack, as RJ says. They're worse in defence. And they, too, built their kind of identity last season of being kind of solid and miserly. And so I think Aguirre will try and adjust that back a little bit and try and kind of taper it off. But they are missing their captain, Tony Rayo, who's out long term with a bad knee injury. So yeah, I think this is very much going to be an identity test for Mallorca. If they can go and keep Villarreal to a low scoring kind of 1-0 win or a draw, they'll see that as a success. Whether Aguirre continues to kind of look for a few more goals, that will be the question here, and probably work in RJ's favour. I mean, with these things, obviously I'm in direct competition with RJ, and I'd like to tear down this pick and say it's terrible, but it's not too bad.
-121, interesting play given the price of the favourite, as Steve was pointing out. Let's get Rory's first pick for the challenge. Celta Vigo, Atletico Madrid here. What's the feeling at Atleti at the moment? Rory, I commentated on their last Champions League game against Feyenoord. I thought they were a bit lucky. I mean, they got some very interesting VAR decisions in their favour. And just looking at the bare results, it looks like they've been scrambling over the line. Is that fair?
It is and it isn't. I think they've been tight games recently, but I think Atleti are viewing that pretty positively, thinking, okay, we're getting into these holes against Cardiff. They went 2-0 down as well, came back to win that 3-2. But we've got enough firepower to get out of them. And Alvaro Morata continues to be in brilliant form, really kind of dismissing the skepticism from my part and pretty much everyone else who's watched Morata for the last decades. But yeah, Atleti are in fine form. Griezmann is in good form. Morata, obviously, as we mentioned. And I think the question for Atleti here and why ultimately I backed them, I've gone Atleti to win here. I think it's coming a little bit. It was +114 when I initially put this in, and now it's gone to +104, I believe. So get on this, I think, before this kind of comes closer to the match. But Atleti lost after the international break last time in September. They lost 3-0 to Valencia. It was an absolutely atrocious performance. And I think the fact that Simeone will come into this and point to that game and say, look, we can't do this again. We're in this title race. We've got a serious chance here. I think they'll go up to Celta. I think they'll win this match against Celta Vigo. Plus 104 that's a very simple pick against the Celta side that they're just not in good form right now, Dan.
Steve, what's your thoughts on this one? I looked at Atleti games prior to Champions League group games last season. They were awful. They drew 5 or 6. They weren't winning games, but the caveat was 2 of the games were against Real Madrid and Barcelona. Is this a good play, a fair play, good price? What do you think?
I don't have a good record with Atletico Madrid games, do I, Dan? I really struggle to get this team. It's, which version of them is going to show up? Will it be the team that's won the last 4, or will it be the team that Ruairidh backed against Valencia? We just don't know. I tell you one thing though, the books always seem to dangle a massive carrot for away games for Atletico Madrid. The price is always way bigger than you expect it to be. Why is that? I just don't know. Just a couple of things about Celta de Vigo. They've actually got the 6th best expected goals in the league. But they have massively underachieved in front of goal. So someone's missing a lot of chances. I'm guessing it may well be my man, Jurgen Strand Larsen. How's he been doing, Rory? I think he scored 3 goals this year. But it's difficult to sort of oppose this pick, really, because Atletico Madrid are by far the better team. It's just hope to get them on not to get them on a bad day, really.
That is the play. We like it. I think it's an interesting one. I tend to like the Athletic picks. I've got a bit of a soft spot for them, and plus money away from home. I'll be following Rory in. Steve, let's get your hot dog. Always popular and in profit for the season. It's a plus money pick across the European leagues. And we're going back to the Bundesliga.
Yeah, the Bundesliga is, I've got to go where the money is, Dan, at the moment. This is the league that's making me the most money. So I'm going, this is a Sunday afternoon prime time kickoff in Germany. Koln against Borussia Mönchengladbach, and I'm going with the away side. Straight on the money line here on Mönchengladbach, plus 190 to win. And there's a reason why this isn't the prime time kickoff game. It is a derby. Big rivalry between these two sides. I can't resist betting against Koln, who have lost 6 out of 7 games. They've not picked up a point yet at home. And they do say, you got to forget the form book in derby games, but I'm not sure about that. I don't think, think about, whatever sports team you support, you do not want to be facing your biggest rival at home in really bad form. I think it's a bad look. The lowest scoring team in the Bundesliga with just 4 goals. Metrically, they've got really poor XGA as well. I think Gladbach are better than what they've shown. If you look at Gladbach, the big problem they've had is their fixtures, especially at home, have been against good teams. If you've got a brutal fixture list, I don't think you can hold it against them too much. They've got the 5th best expected goals in the league with 14. They've got decent attacking players. They've got a good record at this stadium in a derby game, won 3 of the last 6. And I think they're a massive price at plus 190. I know RJ's got a few thoughts to add to this one as well. He's not big on Koln this year. One final thing about this game, if you want to look in the side markets for a bet, have a look at over 4.5 cards at plus 123. The last 5 head-to-heads, there's been at least 4 cards. It's a derby game. Koln are struggling. One way to get the fans back on side is to get stuck in there. So I think this could be quite a dirty game. Might even be a red card, Dan. But I think Gladbach are massively overpriced at plus 190 to win.
Plus 190 to win the game. RJ, it's a lean for you, wasn't it? Anything to add to Steve's thoughts there?
Yeah, I said, what would Steve do here? His favorites. I was thinking of Union, but no, we talked about Koln in the future show, right? I predicted them to drop, right, be relegated, and it's looking promising. I don't want to jinx it, but this side to me just doesn't have what it takes, especially against this Mönchengladbach side, who I think they averaged 2 points, and I'm not an XG guy, but 2.76 XG, goals for. Koln is just under 2. But they're just a very poor side. Will they get on the board potentially? But I think Mönchengladbach have what it takes, even fighting a bunch of injuries to take this side down. I could see a 2-1 type match here for Mönchengladbach to come on top, and at plus 190, it's a very fair price.
Yes, good price. Plus 190. Borussia Mönchengladbach to win away at Koln, who have really struggled this season, haven't won a league game so far. Let's get RJ's second pick for the challenge. Union Berlin against Stuttgart, 9:30 a.m. Saturday here. And the Capital Club are plus 150. Just about favourite. Stuttgart plus 170. Obviously, last season, the prices would have been very, very different. But RJ, Union are in all sorts of bother at the moment. And Stuttgart have been in much better form. Talk us through your play here.
Yeah, so I'm looking at a Stuttgart team total here of over 1.5 goals at plus 135. I said to myself, what would Steve do here, fading Union in some form or fashion? But no, this is a play that I really like. Union, after their 2 opening matches, they won 4-1. They've lost 7 competitive matches since then, which is the longest losing streak for Union and since 2009. You would think they would do some fine tuning here during the international break to address their issues, right? And I think they will to an extent. I'm not saying that they're just gonna be the same side. You would expect some kind of improvement for the side, but then you look at Stuttgart coming to town. Right, I think that's easier said than done. They're sitting in great position. They're 6-1 to start the campaign for this year's Bundesliga, which is their best start to a season, and they've actually already taken on more points, 18 points, and scored more goals, which is 22 than they did in the whole first half of last season. So this is like a tale of two sides here for both Union and Stuttgart, right? They sort of flip-flopped and reverse roles from their last campaign. And looking ahead, right? One of the reasons why this match stood out to me is Union have a Champions League match on Tuesday against Olympiacos, and this is one of those. This is a tough spot for them, right? They come back from international break. They have a very tough match domestically. They have a match in the Champions League, and I'm a strong believer that the sides like Liverpool, Manchester City, the sides, Madrid, the sides that are typically here usually get the job done right before international break to an extent. But this is a side that I could see struggle both domestically and in the Champions League spot. Do they look ahead to the Champions League spot and say, you know what, Stuttgart's coming in hot. We're going to do our best, but, we'll go to church, we'll pray before, and hopefully things work out well for us. I don't know. I think that could be the case here. You look at Union, Robin Gosens. He has 4 goals and 7 Bundesliga appearances. Remarkably, all came before the 35th minute. And then you have Stuttgart Sergio Guirassy, who's already got 13 goals this campaign, which is actually the most across Europe's top 5 leagues. So, and if you look at trends, you look at stats here, only 3 of Union's last 13 Bundesliga home matches have seen both teams score. Not a big deal to me. That's a lot has to do with last season. Injuries for both sides. Stuttgart, very healthy, relatively healthy. And one of the reasons why I took this, Stuttgart over the last 5 away matches averaged just 2 goals for, which is fine. Especially to get to the over 1.5 mark at that price. But neither side have, so Union haven't kept a clean sheet at home so far this season over the last at all for that matter, and Stuttgart have just 3 road matches to look at. They put up 2 against Koln, 3 against Mainz, and they ended up scoring against Leipzig, where they got basically dethroned 5-1. But to me, this has the writings of a Union Berlin side just kind of all in shambles, looking ahead at Champions League, and I could see Stuttgart netting 2+ here fairly easily. And at this price, I think it's worth a good shot.
It's the biggest price we've got for our tipsters in the challenge, plus 135. Stuttgart team total over 1.5. Steve, just give us your thoughts on that bet and tell us your lean here, because you're breaking your 23-24 seasonal rule by siding with Union somehow. Can't quite believe you're doing it, but Steve.
Yeah, I think I shocked you by it when I sent you this yesterday,
Yeah.
Dan. But I actually like Union Berlin in this game. I think taking Union Berlin on a tie no bet at -118. This was nearly an official play of mine. I was a bit disappointed that the price. There's been money for Union Berlin in the last 2 or 3 days. This was a pick 'em completely around even money a few days ago. The thing is, Dan, I think Stuttgart are heading into overrated territory. I really do. Already next week, I'm eyeing up Hoffenheim as a massive, massive price to beat them. And it's all because of this striker, Ruairidh Barlow, who has scored 13 goals, but his XG is only 7.98. I'm familiar with this striker. He can't keep it up. Me and James Easton had a good chat about him on the live reaction show a few weeks ago. And we think he's just kind of a one-season wonder or even a half a season wonder. He's been trotting around the globe this week. He plays for Guinea, scored again in midweek. Is that ideal preparation, though? I think Union Berlin are quite a proud side. They've had 2 weeks, and everyone's telling them how bad they are. And this is an experience...
including you, by the way. But go on.
Yeah, well, exactly. We're getting to the stage now where, incredibly, Union might actually be getting underrated.
Yeah.
That said, I don't hate this pick of RJ's because he's gone with a team total of Stuttgart. Now, this is a massive price. There's no doubt about it. Plus 135 for them to score 2. And if based on the stats, based on the performances this season, it's hard to sort of knock that bet really, because if things don't change, then Stuttgart will come here and win. But I'm just questioning whether Stuttgart can keep this up. They've had quite a soft fixture list. They've only faced one team in the current top 7, and they got battered by Leipzig in that. Union Berlin, meanwhile, have played 5 of the current top 10. So I think that Union, this is a great spot for Union. It's going to be really tough for them in the next few weeks after the Champions League games. I think they're going to be fully focused on this. They've got experienced defenders like Bonucci who could snuff out Guirassy. It still would take a brave man, though. This is a fantastic betting match, Dan, because you got the public are all going to be over Stuttgart. Quite a lot of the stats guys are going to be on Stuttgart as well. Those who sort of rely on models and underlying metrics and sort of betting mentality will favour Union Berlin. So we're going to get a real mixed match of opinions and stuff. So it's a great betting heat, really. I sound like Nigel Seeley here, don't I? Sort of going with the against the grain. But I do think in terms of the Asian handicap, I think Union are the value. But, this is equally, I certainly see where RJ's getting this price from for the over 1.5 team total.
22-1 if you fancy Union Berlin to beat Stuttgart 3-2, which would see both Steve and RJ's bets cop. Incidentally, Guirassy is plus 340 to grab the first plus 120 just to score. When they get that short, Bet Rivers start to put the flip side up, minus 162 not to score. I mean, look, no one tips up minus 162, but if you want to put that in a parlay, at some stage it might start to cut.
I'm gonna make a bold prediction here. Ruairidh Barlow will not score from open play in this game.
Okay. So does he take?
He's on the penalty. If he's on the penalties, yeah, he could take. Penalty's a penalty, isn't it? But I don't think he'll score from open play.
So basically,
I might look completely wrong here. Union
is he on free kicks?
Them all year.
Is he on free kicks? I don't think he's on free kicks.
No, although he's scoring so many goals, he might try and put himself into the
Yeah, I saw an odd stat about Brazil the other day, and someone put up the fact that they don't score from open play, and then they said they score from corners, and I think, well, that's sort of open play, really. Anyway, we move on. That's Union Berlin Stuttgart. We've got a lean from Steve, got an official play from RJ. Let's get Rory's second pick here. Press ganged him into this one a little bit. I'll explain in a sec. Villarreal Alaves, and bit of a same game parlay here, which has worked really well for our handicappers for the most part this season. Rory, talk us through your play.
Yeah, I've gone Villarreal to win and over 1.5 goals. That's coming back at even money as things stand. Again, this is another one where I would recommend acting sooner rather than later, because Villarreal at home to a relegation candidate. Granted, Villarreal are in very poor form. There's a aspect of kind of a leap of faith in this match from me, but that's really quite short for them to be playing at home to Alaves. These teams are actually level on points. They've both got 8 points from their opening 9 games. They're level in terms of results, 2-2 and 5. And Yeah, I mean, Villarreal are averaging closer to 3 goals this season per game. Alaves closer to 2 goals. But I'm as much betting against Alaves as I am for Villarreal here. They're pretty poor away from home. They've lost 2 of their 3. They got a point against Celta Vigo away from home. And granted, they probably should have won that game, but that was, again, more to do with Celta being absolutely dreadful as opposed to Alaves being a revolution. Alaves, as I've said in previous podcasts and previous kind of shows, they've impressed me a little bit more than I expected this season. They've been more ambitious. They've shown more kind of quality than I thought that they had. But a lot of that has come at home as well. And I think away from home, they struggle to keep up the intensity that really causes problems for other sides. And without that kind of crowd aspect, really backing the Mendy Soroth is a nice tight ground. Good one to go to if you ever get the chance. But yeah, I'm back in Villarreal here. They're in kind of dire straits. I mean, they sacked their manager after 4 games. They've appointed a new one. They've not really had the new manager bounce, but this is a Villarreal side that doesn't have too many internationals in their ranks these days. So they've had 2 weeks to kind of assess. They've been doing a few interviews. The president has come out and pointed the fingers at fans actually and said, well, to be honest, it's not really helping when you start booing and whistling midway through the match. So yeah, I think there's perhaps a little bit of a siege mentality coming in here. Pacheta, he is used to things being poor or going badly. I just think Villarreal have a bit too much quality in this one, and it's approaching kind of must-win territory for them. So yeah, Villarreal to win at home over 1.5 goals is not a huge ask from either of these sides either. I think even money's just, it's pretty solid, even if Villarreal have been in poor form. They've got so much more quality than Alaves.
I think this is one that bettors will pick up on, Steve, because as Rory's alluded to there, you just look at this and naturally you think Villarreal should be winning this game. How do you see it?
I'm not sure I could be trusting Villarreal based on what I've seen this season. I watched them against Las Palmas at home, and they were too frantic for my liking. They look quite have elements of panic about them. Their actual metrics this year are nothing remarkable. They're quite poor, actually. But I do wonder, I mentioned Union Berlin there. Now, Villarreal are similar. They've had 2 weeks to kind of, people are kind of telling them how bad they are. They won't like that underlying quality in the teams, no doubt about it. Alaves are newly promoted, and this is around the time where newly promoted teams can struggle. They've had a massive underachievement in front of goal, the worst of any team in LaLiga, 13.58 XG. They've only scored 7 goals. So what's going on there, Rory? Are they missing penalties or something? Or that's shocking. I mean, you can't
they
trust
have
them in
actually
front of
missed
goal.
Penalties.
Right, they missed penalties.
And they don't have a good striker. I mean, Quique Garcia is a solid number 9. He's a kind of veteran striker who works very hard, but he's not an out-and-out goal scorer. There are other options, Samu Omorodion, who's 19 years old, just been signed for Atleti and loaned out. I mean, he's got potential, but he's raw and he's streaky. And you compare that to Villarreal, who've got Alexander Surlot, who's no great shakes, but he is a goal scorer. And then Gerard Moreno, who 3-4 years ago, we're talking now, he was on the Ballon d'Or shortlist. So yeah, if you look at that comparison, just purely in terms of effectiveness in the box, that's another one that I think, as Steve says, a little bit of a leap of faith, but I'm backing this kind of bounce back and this kind of reaction as opposed to their actual form.
That's the thing with betting. You've got to get on top of sides before everyone else kind of does. It may well be that Villarreal are underrated right now. If you can start riding that wagon before they start winning games, you're in business. So I get where he's coming from here. Alaves do have a poor away record, and this is an interesting game. Let's see which version of Villarreal turns up, because they need to improve.
Do we know, Rory, if Villarreal's game against Maccabi Haifa is postponed next week in the Europa League? I don't know if anything has come through. I'm pretty sure Maccabi Haifa have requested the game to be postponed for obvious reasons, unfortunately, but I don't know if they're playing or not. Have you got any news on that?
I'm not actually sure so far. Yes, as I say, I saw the kind of request. Knowing UEFA, I would say they would stick it somewhere that isn't Israel, because they like to get their games done on time, and they don't really leave too much room in the calendar for postponements.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens there.
I think it's in Spain.
Yeah, it is in Spain. It is in Spain. Sorry, yeah, it is. It is. Look, it's an awful situation, as we know, in that part of the world. But just something that I just flashed up regarding Villarreal's fixtures. Let's move on to get some best bets from Steve. We've had the challengers picks from RJ and from Rory. Obviously, our senior handicapper, Steve, also gives us a couple of selections as well. We've got one from Spain, Steve, one from Germany. Let's do Spain first, because we'll get Rory's thoughts on this one as well. And this is one that's just been tweaked a little bit, Steve, because of price changes and so on. Talk us through your LaLiga play.
Yeah, Girona against Almeria, and I'm going with the Girona on a minus 1.25 Asian handicap. For those who want an explanation on that, then me and you have actually done a video recently, haven't we, Dan? So check. Hopefully that'll be posted up somewhere soon on the Because We Win YouTube channel or whatever. This almost looks too obvious. In fact, it's so obvious, I'm almost convinced it's a trap, because Almeria are just, I mean, they've been the worst side in La Liga this year on the field, with their metrics. Their expected goals against is horrendous. It's conceded 24 goals. I mean, Girona score goals for fun. They're a legitimate offensive force. I've mentioned them before a lot on this show that they've scored a lot of goals, and they play great football. A great team to watch, Girona. And I was a bit before the international break. I was a bit unlucky with my hot dog in the over 3.5. There was an early red card which did for me in the Cadiz game, and also it was brutally hot temperatures, which that was my bad. I didn't really look at the weather forecast there. But I mean, they should have way too much for Almeria here. Surely, this was going to be a -1 Asian handicap, but the price has gone to -136 there now. So I'll take the -1.25. You've got to think they should be able to score at least two or three goals. Girona do concede goals as well, but whether or not Almeria are the sort of side who can take advantage of that, I just don't really think they can. They just look so poor. I love betting against bad teams, Dan. I just love it. And this just looks at a really good opportunity for Girona to continue their great start of the season.
Rory, you suggested before we started recording there was a game that you looked at, and I presume that your thinking was fairly similar to Steve.
Yeah, I was looking at Girona plus over 2.5 goals in the game, and the only slight reason I kind of edged away from that was the fact that it's new manager for Almeria. Gaizka Gavidano has come in, but they are still missing two of their strikers have been ruled out for a while as well. Luis Suarez is out long term, and Ibrahim Akone has picked up an injury too. So I think logic and reason suggests this should be a pretty comfortable win for Girona. It's only that kind of, slightly too obvious aspect. I was actually at that game in Cadiz parked. It felt like the sun was even giving me special attention. I was basically passed out after that game for a few hours because it was very warm and just a hot and stuffy game. A bit unlucky for you, Steve. If it had been about 10 degrees lower, it might have...
That's my bad. I've said before, I've always said hot weather either leads to defenses just falling, not being able to compete, and you get a wild game, or you get a 0-0. And it was clear after 5-10 minutes, really, even before the red. It was just too hot for football, wasn't it?
Bundesliga for your second pick, Steve. Heidenheim, Augsburg, Asian handicap overs you've gone for here. Talk us through this one. This is Sunday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. The La Liga game is Sunday, 10:15. So you get Steve's pick pretty much back to back, Steve.
Yeah, I'm going with Augsburg against, Heidenheim against Augsburg. First ever competitive meeting between these two teams. And the bet is over 2.75 goals. I think it's at -110. Might be a little bit shorter now. I'm not entirely sure. But I like the goals here. It wouldn't be a European show without a Bundesliga over, would it? And really, I thought this goal line would be 3. Newly promoted Heidenheim have actually been decent so far. But I think they will. I mean, I think both these two teams will end up in the bottom 5, in my personal opinion. So it's a very winnable game for both. And when I think both teams fancy the win, I always look for goals, because there's no real team for either. Looking for a draw isn't that advantageous, in these type of fixtures. But Heidenheim, they've done well, but they have been lucky. If you look at the goals they conceded, it's 15. They've got an XGA of nearly 20. They do concede a lot of chances. You would expect that from a side that's just come up from Bundesliga 2. Augsburg are very middling in terms of their metrics, but they get involved in a lot of high-scoring games. 7 out of 8 matches over 2.5 goals. Heidenheim, it's interesting. These two sides, it's their first ever competitive meeting, but they've played each other quite a lot in friendlies. They're reasonably closely located geographically. I'm not sure if this is a derby or not. I'm not a massive expert in that part of Germany, Dan. But I think it'd be a good game. I think both will trade some punches. back and forth. I think both teams scoring. It could be like a 2-2 draw. It just screams out goals to me, as the whole of the Bundesliga is right now. There's a ridiculous stat, which I'm going to come back to. Now, I think that's 14 of the 18 teams average at least 3.4 goals per game. That has to come down at some point. There's no doubt about it. That's not sustainable. But this is a league seriously for goals right now. This is where the money is for goals, and that's why I'm heavily interested in the Bundesliga right now, Dan.
3.52 average goals per game, 63 games in the Bundesliga this season. Steve likes over 2.75 goals in Heidenheim, Augsburg. We've got some leans and we are running out of time, but I just want to give a shout out to RJ's Koln relegation pick. You tipped them up, RJ, at plus 500. They're plus 250 now. Would you get involved even at plus 250, RJ? You think they're that poor?
I think so. I think anything over plus 200, I'd get involved with. That's a pretty dramatic drop. I mean, they are sitting in the bottom of the table, so it's not a shock. But I just don't see them turning it around. I mean, like I said, what could change for them to help them improve outside of just taking draws? And I don't even think that they just don't have the scoring abilities, in my opinion, to keep up with this league this year.
Well, if you played RJ's tip at the start of the season, you've got a value play and plus 250. You could press up a little bit. Let's rattle through some leans here before we just confirm the picks. Rory, you've got leans in 2 games. Give us a line on both of them.
Yeah, just quickly, Sevilla over 2.5 cards. That comes back at minus 114, I think it was. They will struggle to compete with Real Madrid at home in a fiery Saturday night game, so they're going to start fouling them. And Las Palmas draw no bet against Rayo Vallecano at home as well. I think that's minus 122. Las Palmas struggle with goals, but they are a good side and they're very good at home as well. So I expect them to do pretty well against Rayo here. It'll be a toss-up of a game, but I think you're pretty safe with your money one way or another with that bet. And just to plug myself there as well, plus 135, Jude Bellingham over 6.5 goals for the season. That came back in very early.
He did. That is our first one to cash. I mean, that's fantastic. Nice. Yeah, I mean, and we've had so many handicappers play with Bellingham shots and goals since the start of the season. But Rory, yeah, hats off. You tipped him up right at the start. Very quickly, Steve, we've been very La Liga, German and Bundesliga heavy, but you've got a pick in Italy and in France for us, or a lean.
Yeah, just want to say well done to Rory with that outright as well. Brilliant pick to cash so early. Fantastic there. In terms of France, I've got to say, Liga is really tough for value this year, Dan. That's why I've not been involved as much as normal. But Monaco Metz, I like both teams to score no at plus 108.
Thanks for that. That's my game for TNT Sport on Sunday. Thanks for that.
Reason being, this is basically the same bet as Monaco to win to 0. Metz are so poor in front of goal. They offer nothing. They lost their best striker to Ajax in the summer, and I'd be surprised if they get on the score sheet here. So plus money for Monaco to win to 0, or you got the 0-0 just in case as a goalkeeper worldly performance or something. And then Roma against Monza in Serie A. Mourinho's in the news recently. I think it looks like he's going to be his last year at Roma, possibly going to Saudi, all that sort of thing. He'll want a big performance here. And, Monza doing surprisingly well. They're actually above them in the table. Whenever I think of Monza, I just think of the Grand Prix circuit, to be honest, not football. But minus 0.75 here, Roma. Close to even money. I think well worth a go. And I think Mourinho's in pole position for this one.
Very good. You can come back next week. RJ, remind us of your 2 picks for the challenge.
Yes, good wordsmith there, Steve, by the way. Looking at Real Sociedad versus Mallorca, over 2 goals at minus 121. And head into the Bundesliga, FC Union Berlin versus Stuttgart. Looking at Stuttgart team total over 1.5 at plus 135.
Rory?
Atleti to beat Celta plus 104, and Villarreal to beat Alaves and over 1.5 goals in the game. That's plus 100 right now.
Steve, who's going to win? I got it wrong last week.
I don't comment anymore, Dan.
Well, listen.
We're 0-8 now combined, aren't we?
We are. I think RJ's picks are interesting because of their prices. Because I think you know, your minus 121 you could end up winning it with that. But if your other bet comes up, you plus 135 on the Stuttgart, I think you may well win it. I like the fact, and me and Steve talked about this right at the start of the season, Steve. We wondered if tactics would emerge or just whether, handicappers would just play their best bets, which I think is probably still the case. But sometimes if you can work out that if just one could nick it for you one way or the other, I don't know. I just like the pricing for these.
Where are you with the Union match, Dan?
I think they are
which side
underrated.
you on?
I think they're underrated. I think they could win that game.
But you think Stuttgart may well get the 2 goals?
I think it could be
as
a
well.
2-2 or something like that. I think we could. I think it could be like that Braga game in the Champions League. I mean, Braga won that one.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, it could be something.
I think
like
that is sort of typical. And if they do win it by the odd goal in 5 or the odd goal in 7 or something like that, it could completely turn their season around. Because I don't think they're a poor side. I know
it's a really interesting game. But I think that's a fantastic betting game. Like
be a good betting game. Good game to watch. We're over time. Steve, RJ, Rory, thanks for your company. Good luck to all. We'll keep everyone updated via our X feeds, of course. That is a wrap for Betting Weekly Extra Time European show. I'll be back alongside Steve next week, as will one of RJ or Rory, who will be taking on pro bettor Will White, who will be back on the show. Stay across all of the Bet Rivers content this weekend. At Because We Win is our X handle from all of us. For now, though, it is goodbye.